We are live here on Twitch. Well, good evening, everyone. And a little bit of an interesting and different and special night on this particular night. A console that I ordered many, many months ago has finally come in. I have been waiting for this console to show up for such a long time. And it's crazy because I ordered this console before I was doing really a lot of streaming. I mean, I've been doing streaming on and off for several years now, but it's been interesting and it's been a fun ride. And over those several months, I've realized that this is just a system that will do something that I feel like my whole setup has been kind of lacking. And I love to do all of my gaming in RGB. I don't do any HDMI output. Um, but I don't get to do a ton of gaming. On the NES and Famicom, I do have my modded Famicom AV, which will do RGB output. But there's always a couple things that just won't work quite right on there. And this system by Analogue can do so many of those things. And so I'm really excited and I'm super thrilled to be able to unbox this thing and to have a system that can fill that fill that need, right? So, I think the notifications have just gone out. So, um, what are we going to end up doing with this? Alex Shaggy, good evening. Well, everyone kind of files in here. This is going to be a shorter stream. It'll be definitely less than an hour. I'm basically running some of these things on battery. You can't see on this camera, but there's a whole lot of stuff right here. So this is going to be a fun experience. I've never done a live unboxing before. I'm huge into unboxings. Not, I mean, I do watch some unboxings on YouTube and things like that, but I love to get that experience, seeing exactly what all's in the package, cutting it open ever so like delicately, and that kind of thing. So that's going to happen this evening. So I'm going to be really engrossed in doing my unboxing. So if I don't get to all of your comments and questions and everything, I apologize. If it goes too long without me answering, just by all means, maybe ask again. I'll try and get to it as I get to it. But I'm going to be focused less on you, less on me, more on the gadget in front of us. I am, for longtime watchers of this channel, y'all know how long I've been wanting this. I mean, for the regulars that have been here since like the April or April, May, June time period, I was excited about this thing coming in the mail. I, Gosh, before the whole like first delay thing happened, I was all like, yeah, in July we're gonna be playing a lot of NES, and then we couldn't because it didn't it didn't come out in July like it was originally supposed to. It didn't ship. It got delayed, of course, due to COVID and the world events, which was unfortunate. But we're here now, and that delay has brought us all closer together, and we've got an Analog Mini NT Noir to unbox. So I think let's jump into it. Shall we start up? I think we should start up. All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the end of Scanline. And tonight, we're going to be doing an unboxing of a system that I've been waiting for what seems like forever. I mean, I ordered this system before letting this sink in. This system was available for pre-order before COVID. I mean, at least before COVID became like a really big thing, right? And it feels like even before then I was excited, and then during quarantine and all these months that have passed, I feel like I've been super excited about this thing to come in. And this evening we get to unbox an Analog NT Mini Noir together. We're gonna do it together. We're gonna do it live here, and of course we're streaming this live, but we'll have this recording put up on YouTube afterwards. So without any further ado, let's pop this thing open. Now, before we do that, to preface, I'm going to do an unboxing of this thing. We're going to do a little bit of comparison between what's in this box and what you're typically going to be like comparing it to. For example, we're going to compare that controller to the original controller. That's going to be like a really big deal. And then, of course, we're not going to be doing any gaming on this thing over HDMI. There's going to be tons of reviewers who are going to review this thing over HDMI. We don't really do that on this channel. We play everything in RGB. So we're going to be having this console available. Oh, and Devin K, thank you for the raid. We've got this system available with RGB. So I've got my PVM in front of me. That's how I stream all of my games, is on my PVM. And I only play games in RGB. So I'm not concerned with the HDMI output on this console one bit. I'm looking for how is that RGB output. And because the system was delayed, it actually allowed my retro game cables order from the UK to come to the US in time. So we've got that too. So we're going to be doing an unboxing of the Analogue NT-Mini Noir and retro game cables. So let's do the Analogue NT-Mini Noir. All right. So we've got the table camera here. So we've got this console right in front of us. Super, super minimalist packaging here. And obviously they've got it covered in like a cellophane. It's like a black on black label. It's really difficult to kind of make out. It's difficult to see on camera. You've got 1080p HDMI, FPGA, unparalleled compatibility. And it's packaged with the 2.4 gigahertz version of the 8-bit DOE N30. So it also comes with an HDMI cable, a USB cable, and a power supply. So let's flip this thing over and let's delicately slice it open on its edges. We've got an X-Acto knife here. So let's go and very, very carefully slice it open. We're going to be slicing it towards us, which is children at home, not what you should be doing. It is super, super tight, and this thing is not very sharp. Here we go. Cellophane does not want to slice. It gets like super tight here in the middle. The idea behind doing it this way, for those who are wondering why I'm doing this, is if you can keep the cellophane intact on the edges, you can keep the cellophane on the front of the box, and that'll hold everything together much, much nicer. Those sweet peels. Yeah, of course. That's that side. This is like super, super thick cellophane too. You know what? It ain't that big a deal. I think that we're gonna just go for it. Shall we just rip it? I think we should just rip it. Are we ready? Oh, just so satisfying. Okay. So. Oh, and they're... Oh, wow, okay. This thing's really good looking. I mean, first impressions, straight off the bat, it's pretty, y'all. So there we go, straight up and down. So naturally, you're seeing 2 cartridge slots, right? You've got your NES port in front, and then you've got your Famicom port in the back. And we can go ahead and just pull it right up out of there. Oh, it's heavy too. Okay, interesting. Let's do what we don't really want to do and just kind of set that to the side for a minute. Let's take a look at what else is in the box. Layer of foam. Another layer of foam here. Little divider. All right, what's else in here? Some desiccant. We've got some power plugs here. Let's see, what adapter does it come with? Oh, it comes with nothing already on there. So we're going to have to attach an adapter for our part of the world, which Guessing is just this one right here. All right, so our American style plug, because we're in the US. So this guy has a barrel plug on the other side. It's not like a USB plug, so it actually is proprietary. That's fine. We'll set that off to the side. We have some documentation. Welcome to Analogue, and we've got some cool diagrams and logos on there. Command any controller, press down and select to access in-game menu, zero lag emulation with FPGAs. Cool beans. And we have the new 8-bit DOE 2.4 gigahertz NES controller, and it's got your micro USB on one side. What condition was it? Brand new. These just started shipping yesterday. Or rather, you know, they just started really arriving today, but I mean, yeah, they just started shipping like a couple days ago, so. Then on the back of the controller, it's very close in color gray to the original. So I've got a wired controller right next to it. You can see sort of the color shade differences. It's very, very, very close here. And as far as colors and finish go, it's a little more reflective than the NES one, but as far as the concave buttons and the D-pad, we've got a lot of similarities here. We're going to be giving this a try out. It looks like it's going to feel really good. It straight off the bat feels very, very similar. So we're going to give that a shot here in a bit. We'll set the controller off to the side. And then, of course, also in here, we've got an HDMI cable, which on this channel, we're not going to be using this on this channel. Let's be real. And we have a USB to micro USB. We're going to use this charger to charge that controller, which we don't really need. And then this right here is going to be our 2.4 gigahertz receiver for the controller, right? Because this system has 4 NES ports on the front of it. So let's get this thing reassembled, but backwards. Get that popped back in. Get the foam back in. Seal it back up. And we'll set that off to the side. So, what we're all here for is for this guy. And it is looking gorgeous, y'all. It is exceptionally clean looking. The color is awesome. It's difficult to describe. You can tell there's black. This NES controller is black, right? So you can tell it's this like really dark gray gunmetal color. It's got a really, really good finish. It looks and feels like, you know, you'd expect a really premium chunk of metal like on an Apple product to feel like. It's heavy. It feels really, really great. And I'm definitely loving it. Let's see, what else here? Babe, did you mean to call me? Oh, that's okay, babe. All right, so let's take a look at this system. So let's flip it over. And straight off the bat, I can tell there are some definite differences between how this originally looked in the pictures on Analogue's website. The solder points are all silver, right? And it looked like they were a lot more gold in Analogue's original pictures. So that's going to be a tiny bit different from kind of what I was expecting. But the other logos and everything else are gold on the bottom, which is awesome. I do love to see the acrylic bottom, so you can kind of see how that looks. I think it looks really super great on the bottom. And then, of course, the other thing that was kind of unclear from the pictures, the controller ports are clear, and you can kind of see that here in the pictures. These clear controller ports with gold contacts on the inside just makes it look just really, really good. I'm definitely impressed. So that's pretty much how it looks. So this is the same form factor as your original Analogue NT Mini, but there's a few differences. So you've got lots of gold connectors on the back. So a bunch of this is going to start looking a little foreign. So let's kind of run through that here. So obviously going from my right to left here, you've got HDMI output, of course, most people are going to be using an HDMI output on this system, which is normal, right? But we're not going to be using that. We're going to be using the RGB output. Now, this port on here looks like a VGA, you know, like monitor port, but this is actually D-Sub 15, and it's pretty common to have D-Sub 15 connectors with different standards for different outputs. So if you do want to do RGB output on this thing, you're going to have to make sure that you get the right cables to go with it. I've ordered some special cables that are the correct pinout for this, but you can see here on the label, it actually does specify RGB, component, S-video, and composite. So based on how they have it configured, you're going to get a bunch of different outputs on this thing. You've got audio left and right jacks. You've got a headphone port. Now this headphone port is actually for a microphone, which you're thinking that's kind of weird and kind of strange. But Famicoms, the Japanese NES, the original system actually had a microphone in the second player controller, and naturally you're not going to have that, right? So this microphone will let you play games like the original Legend of Zelda and utilize the microphone that you know, would pick up your voices and enable you to kill Pole's voice. So that's pretty cool. This port right here is the expansion port that was common on the side of the Famicom. You've got your DC power in, and you've got USB for, I'm assuming, for like firmware updates. But I mean, oh, maybe it's just for charging the controller, because you've got an SD card here right on the side, and I'm pretty sure you use the SD cards on the side here for doing firmware updates and things like that. Because it is FPGA based, it is capable of being updated on the fly. So we're gonna pop this thing in and see how it works. So we've of course got our controller here, and you've got 4 controller ports here. So the original NES and Famicom, of course, only had 2 controller ports. You got 4 here because some NES games did actually support a multi-tap, like Nintendo World Cup Soccer and Volleyball. I think both of those are 4-player games, so we're gonna give that a shot. So plugging that in, it does stick out a little ways, so it does look a little bit awkward. Does the expansion port mean that it's compatible with the Famicom disk system? Famicom disk system actually plugs in the standard controller, or sorry, the standard cartridge slot right here. So yes, and the cutout right here does make it compatible. You just kind of pop it on top. We'll do a stream this week where we compare all the different kind of stuff that we can plug into it, compare all sorts of video outputs. We'll do a couple basic things this evening, but we're definitely going to be trying out the Famicom disk system RAM slot, which just chunks right here on the top and goes in the Famicom port here on the top. You have to manually select between cartridge slots? I don't think so. I think it's just supposed to auto-detect, but we're going to figure that out here in just a minute. And to play this, we've got retro game cables from the UK. I've ordered this is like a special thing that they make specifically for analog systems. I've ordered their D-Sub 15 to SCART adapter. So the thing you want to keep in mind is this system does have a somewhat proprietary RGB output. So the issue is that many systems like a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis would output the audio and the video through some sort of a proprietary connector, like you'd normally find on the back of a game system. But the connector on this system is proprietary in that it only has video through this port, and the audio is in your jacks right here. So if you want to go into your typical SCART inputs, like a lot of the switchers would have, like the Otaku switch, the Hydra, things like that, you're going to have to get a proprietary cable that will go in and mux together the video that would be in this D-Sub 15 and the audio in these RCA jacks. And that is exactly what this cable does. We're going to pull that out. I believe this is the 6-footer. It's pretty long. It's got SCART on one end, which is how everything is wired up for my setup here. And then the cables, which are kind of strange here. You can see you've got your D-Sub 15 plus your RCA for audio left and right. So your video and your audio here. So we're going to have these going into here. And that's what we're going to power this thing up with. Before we do that, very quickly, we're going to have a look at the only, as far as I'm concerned, competing product to this one, which is a modified AV Famicom from Japan. As far as size goes, these things are relatively close. You want to do a comparison here. It is a tiny bit bigger than the Japanese Famicom AV. Now, this Famicom AV has been modified to support RGB output. This has the Tim Worthington mod in it, and a lot of the really hardcore gamers and streamers. I learned a lot of these things from the RGB Masterclass on YouTube, and you know, this is definitely one of the best ways to go if you want all original hardware. As far as, for the most part, right, it's got several mods in it to do RGB output, as well as a palette switcher on the back. This system does a lot of these things via FPGA, so I'm really curious to see how this very common and sort of the de facto standard as far as mods go compares to the FPGA-based solution. So let's give it a shot here. So just for starters, we're gonna, I've got this already plugged in. You can see I've got it already wired up here. So this has Super Mario Bros. 3 in it on here, and this title screen has a lot of good color in it, so this is what we're going to do some comparison to. So let's switch over to the inputs. Well, how is this going to work with the OSSC, if at all? Totally. So I run all of my systems through SCART, and I go from SCART into my PVM, out through the PVM into my OSSC. So with these retro game cables, with these SCART cables, I can run this Analogue NT Mini the exact same way I can run every other one of my RGB systems. And it all goes over SCART, all RGB. So let's have a look here. So I've got scan lines turned off, which is a weird thing for this channel. But I've got scan lines turned off so we can see the raw output of, and this is of course the Japanese Famicom system here. So as far as colors, we'll use this as a reference. And of course we can skip around when we look at this VOD afterwards. We can skip around and see the comparison between the two video outputs. So we've got lots of reds, greens, and blues on the screen here, so we can use that as a good reference. As soon as Mario and Luigi jump through, I'll go ahead and get the input switched over, and we'll get this thing plugged in here. So we've got their proprietary power cable, which I've already got leads here ready to plug this thing in, so it's going to be an easy one. The system just looks really, really good. I don't know how they decided, hey, let me just make this thing in the best looking finish possible. There we go. Right, so it's all wired up. Record here. So let's switch inputs and let's power this thing up. Like this. What would you play on that? On this system, it plays any NES game and any Japanese NES game, and I've got tons of games. My whole collection's behind me. Lola 1 through 3. There's a lot of good stuff we can play on this. I brought a few choice games over that I think will look really, really good as far as, you know, how this system looks. I'll get to that in a second. I kind of wanted to show the thing off. I chose a game that I know is going to look really, really good with this gunmetal finish because it shows up a lot in their advertisement. So let's come back here. We're going to power this guy off. We're going to take Mario 3 because that's the game we're going to use as reference here. Move this guy off to the left is this one, red is this one. We're going to go with sub 15 in here. So we can do RGB. Wired up on here. So this is how we're going to be playing this game this evening. Change inputs and let's go for it. I'm assuming that as soon as we pop this power cord in, we'll get some power. Oh, you know what? No, there's actually a switch on the back of here. So this is our power switch right here. We're going to depress that. Oh, it did something. Oh, it lights up on the front. What? Well, that's cool. Okay. Run cartridge settings, power off system. Assuming that by touching it, I can power it off. Okay, so let's pop the cartridge in. We're going to do Mario 3 Japanese copy. So straight off the bat, I'm a little concerned about the cartridge slots scratching the games, but we'll give that more of a shot as time goes on. The original system did scratch cartridges, and I think that these little teeth right here on the edges of this cartridge flap, I think these were added so that it would not scratch cartridges. It looks like there's something extra, like maybe they're made out of plastic, which would be really great because we don't want to scratch cartridges that could be worth more than the system is. So let's switch it over, and then you can see this boot up from scratch. It's kind of creepy, but I like it. On maybe start. Oh, B confirms. Interesting. Okay. And straight off the bat, we're definitely seeing a more natural color palette than the enhanced version that we had. Oh gosh, it's super, super bright. Let's see here. We're going to need to look at changing some video settings here. So straight off the bat, this does look quite a bit different than the Famicom does. You'll notice that the colors are way more blown out. And gosh, even the OSSC is not like super down with it. Let me kickstart the OSSC. OSSC come up from scratch, and then we'll turn scan lines back off. I've got artificial scan lines obviously on here for reasons. So we don't want to have the scan lines turned on just for a good comparison. But straight off the bat, the colors are looking super, super blown out. So yeah, we're going to want to go and configure this right quick. So if we hold select and down, it goes to a... Okay, let's go to settings, video... Resolution, screen size, scalars, scan lines, wabba-weeba. We don't need that on this TV because I'll add them artificially with my OSSC. Analog output. Ooh, to the DAC, which we don't really need to do anything about the DAC. Let's see here. Resolution, screen size, scalars. Ooh, so we don't need to worry about scaling, obviously, because we're in full analog. Advanced mode. Sure. Color. Ooh, now we're talking. Video system. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Let's try the color right here. Limit RGB range. We're going to have to go through and play with this a lot because the color looks a whole lot like an NES would look. And so we're going to need to go through and actually really, really dig down into how this system looks. And then, what's in tools? Let's check a look at tools here. Cheat codes and NSF player. Not safe for player. Let's see. Other settings we've got audio settings. Oh, we can go and fiddle with the settings like a ton. System settings, menu options, startup options, hardware, and LED options. There's an LED on the front of the system that it looks like we can configure, which is pretty neat. Audio quality already. FC had a quiet hum. This is completely silent. I didn't catch that. I'll have to have a look at that in post. Startup options. Ooh, here we go. Startup options, boot sequence delay. Why would I want to put a boot sequence delay? Menu title cartridge. Ooh, cartridge direct. That would be kind of convenient. So that's pretty cool. So select and start, I believe, brings us back. So another thing that I want to actually do a slight tryout here before we jump in and play. As far as the game goes, it's incredibly bright. And for whatever reason, my OSSC does not like whatever's coming out of this analog. I'm not sure if it's like going out of range or something else, but we're going to have to take a look and see why this OSSC is not looking quite right. The picture looks super, super saturated and super, super bright. So we're going to have to take a look at that. Yeah, it seems like my OSSC likes it for a while, and then it doesn't. So we've got scan lines back on, because that's ultimately how we're gonna end up wanting to play this here. And just like that, the OSSC stops reading it. That's kind of interesting, that it immediately just kind of rejects it. I mean, for comparison, we can switch back to a Famicom and make sure that it's not that. I want to see if the OSSC freaks out again. Yeah, there's something with the video output on this thing that the OSSC does not like. I wonder what it's doing. I'm kind of curious to see if others have had similar issues. Because it looks like it will eventually stop and then come back. But it seems far, far brighter than what I would get out of... Yeah, it's not coming back this time. Strange. For comparison, we're going to switch back to the OG hardware and see if there's a big difference here. I'm going to depower this thing. We're going to depower that. I think I hold it down and it goes off. Pull the game out here. We're going to set this off to the side, and we're going to pop the original hardware back in. So original Famicom hardware, it usually takes a second to resync, and then it just works normal. But let's try and see what this 2.4 gigahertz receiver does in this Famicom. See how well that works. Straight off the bat, I've got the enhanced color palette on here, which I think looks far more natural, but we can change it to more of the original output, which I think is this, what we have here. This looks a lot closer to what we were getting out of the Analogue. Straight off the bat, I'm not having any problems with video. It does seem like whatever's coming out of the Analogue is not being liked at all by the OSSC. It's kind of an interesting thing, because this seems to go with that issue here. Yeah, strange. I don't know why the OSSC just simply does not like this console. It could be maybe that something about the video settings are out of range. So maybe fair warning to anyone who does pick this up, might need to go through and do some sort of a firmware update or tweak the settings to where, you know, they're within a range that the OSSC does like. And of course, I do want to change the color palette on the Analogue system. I love having a palette switcher on this version, so I can go through and look at the different palettes that are available. I tend to like the saturated, not bright looking version. The palette with the original NES was very, very dull, and some games really they look really good with the dull palette, like Castlevania. The oranges will look brown, and bricks should be brown, not bright orange. And if you have the oversaturated color palettes that you have, even on like a lot of emulators and things like that, games like Castlevania will look really, really orange. And then other games, like Super Mario, just look super dull. So it depends on the title and whether or not the developers were accounting for the NES's muted color palette. So let's swap back to the Analogue, right? This is an Analogue review. So let's look one more time at this system, and then we're going to pop in and do the compatibility test. So there are a few games that are just simply not compatible with clone systems, and the Analogue is supposed to be really, really good at playing those games. The games specifically would be Castlevania 3. Castlevania 3, this is the Japanese one. I can throw an American one in there, but they're both the same concept. They have, it's a non-standard cartridge. This cartridge actually has some additional chips in it for additional channels of audio that make for a really, really good experience. And because of that, this game simply will not play in most clone consoles, the American one or the Japanese one. So we're going to make sure this works on this system. Now, in a lot of their marketing material, they were usually pretty diligent about, showing off, hey, it works with Castlevania 3. And we're going to prove that. So let's pop the controller port back in. And one more time, we're going to do Super Mario Bros. 3 here. Turn this system on. Yeah, I'm going to have to go through and tweak these color settings a ton. Love the little boot up animation, though, whenever it decides to boot up. I don't like the whole, delay on the boot up sequence. It's kind of strange. Whenever it decides to... Oh, shit. Okay, so... Gotta press start to get it to go, and then run cartridge. Oh, it's B to confirm, which is so backwards. So bright. Like it's like blinding bright. I mean, I have my PVM. I don't adjust the brightness settings on it, but even on the pass-through, it's looking super, super bright, which I don't necessarily think is correct. The greens look really great. The reds look super thrown off. Let's give it a shot again. Let's see if it's still, when we get into a level, if the OSSC hates it. That's going to end up being a really big deal because the OSSC is the sort of de facto standard for a lot of people when it comes to running RGB systems. A lot of folks had the FrameMeister years ago, and then as soon as the OSSC became available, that became sort of the standard that a lot of people will use. Everything is super, super bright, and even on the capture, it looks almost like a completely white sky. And there's something with, I don't know if it's just a non-standard frame rate or some other output, but there's definitely some incompatibilities here with the OSSC, with the screen flickering and things like that. Very strange, and going to no signal all the time. The game's still playing, of course, on my end. It could be a setting thing, but I would anticipate that this kind of thing should just straight up work out of the box. I mean, it is Analogue after all. Analogue, the company being very premium, and Analogue, the signal being just, it's a signal that just comes out. But yeah, there's definitely some incompatibilities here. So huge red flag, right, that needs to be watched out for here. I'm curious to see what this would do over HDMI. I'm assuming that it'd probably be just fine over HDMI. The RGB does look, as far as the signal cutting out and stuff like that, on my TV, it's perfectly fine. I think it is just a problem between here and the OSSC. Orange is coming out white. Yeah, exactly. The OSSC is the open source scan converter. It's a device that converts RGB to HDMI. It's a device that a lot of people will use to play analog game systems on their flat panel or high-def TV. I just use it as an output to capture for the Twitch stream. And yeah, there's definitely an incompatibility here. We'll have to do some research and see if there's a reason for that. The colors look super, super blown out. I don't have any special adjustments that I make on any of my streams. All my systems output like standard range to this thing, so it's kind of strange. But let's try some of those other games. Power it off here, and let's try that Castlevania and see if Castlevania works with it. So we're going to try Castlevania 3. It says Dracula's Curse. Boot up sequence is sick, though. Oh, try NES and Famicom carts at the same time? Yeah, we should do that and see what it does. I'm kind of curious. So, got a NES cart here. Run cartridge. What does it do? Freak out? I'm kind of curious as to what it does. Looks like it freaked out. Let's not do that then. So there you have it. It doesn't do anything. So it doesn't actually do anything with both cartridges, so there's that. So let's see what happens with Castlevania here. I assumed it would maybe give me an option to read one slot or the other, but I would imagine they're probably just pinned to the exact same input as opposed to being two separate inputs. Even on the title screen, the OSSC just hangs with it. There's some issues here with video. On my screen, I definitely get a very, very yellow film strip on the left and right side. It's very much black or white here on the OSSC. There's a problem here on the OSSC. As far as on my screen, it's looking decent. It's again just like on the Super Mario Brothers. My screen's still moving. OSSC is frozen, and yeah, the colors are very vibrant, but they're very, very bright. It's very, very blown out. And of course, we're back in sync here. It's really strange. But straight off the bat, we can tell the game is definitely playing. And we're gonna get into a level so we can hear that music, and you can hear the extra audio tracks. I'm actually kind of curious. Let me turn the volume up on here. It doesn't sound quite right to me. What? Hold the phone. Sounds terrible. So let's switch this over here. So we're gonna throw the Japanese system back up here. We're gonna pop the cartridge back out. I like this 8-bit-do controller. This controller feels great. And we're gonna change inputs right quick. Are those pins really tight? The pins don't feel so tight as much as the cartridge slot feels really, really tight. The flaps, there's a whole lot of pressure in there. So overcoming that to like fully get it open and then push down. So, switching back here, this is what the output of my Famicom looks like. I've got it on the saturated mode. So let's just do an audio comparison here. First of all, the audio was super, super quiet on the Analogue, which is bizarre. This is what the audio should sound like. Is this going to be a return console? They're incredibly limited, and This is what it should sound like. Like, super good. Yeah, because these, I mean, these are some jams right here. Yeah, and the colors look really good, though this is oversaturated. People traditionally want to see it look like this. And this is what, you know, a developer would do if they were going to compensate for the fact that the system did not have a very good color output, and they would want to artificially make the colors so that they looked how they wanted them to look at the output. Different developers kind of did different things. Konami did that. So, obviously, not only does it play, but it sounds substantially better on the original console. So, we're going to have to really do some internet research here and kind of see what's going on with this system. I don't want to just like completely blast it. This is a totally updatable as far as firmware goes, and it's FPGA based. It's not like it's just purely like this forever. We need to go and we need to basically see what the big differences are going to be as far as like firmware and settings, because some things could be settings and a tweaking of the color. I don't think we have any solution for this, at least in the immediate, like right now. So I'm gonna have to do some more research and see if there's some different output settings that we need to go and adjust this thing to do to be able to talk correctly with the OSSC. I highly doubt that it's cabling or anything like that. It's likely settings, but if it's not settings, even if it's firmware, they can usually do some updates, but we need to keep an eye on this. So I'll do some more research on here and see if anybody else has, of course, wanted to run this thing over RGB. It is the biggest selling point of a system like this. So the biggest reason why Analogue would make these things in the first place, before they did any of the other systems, was aside from giving the NES an amazing, handcrafted tribute console with HDMI output, the big reason is the NES had really, really bad video output, and unless you wanted to severely modify an original console to get a really good RGB output, there really isn't any other good or reliable option from any sort of a clone system or any sort of an aftermarket console, which is why a lot of folks like me are running original hardware that's been modified. This is the best option that exists, and on the Japanese system there's a ton of compromises that you have to make in using a Japanese system. I had to go and mod the controller ports on this one to be able to accept a light gun, the zapper, on the second controller port, something that the Famicom just didn't do because that's not how you connected it to the Japanese system. You connected it through the expansion port here on the side. So things like that. The second player controller on the Japanese system does not have start and select buttons. So some games that require the use of pressing start and select for your player 2 simply don't work right on the Japanese system. Just about everything else works fine. I use an adapter to play American games on here. It's not just for Japanese games. But yeah, we're going to have to go and dive into that deeper. As far as how it looks, though, the system does look exceptionally good. And, I mean, it is a really pretty boutique-y system, especially when you throw some Zelda on there. Now, I'm curious as to how Zelda looks. Should we see how Zelda looks? Let's see how Zelda looks, because obviously it's going to look awesome poking out of here. I'm so hesitant to just, like, force it down on... It feels good. I should just get over it. Okay, let's swap the controller back over here. Do you have Castlevania 3 for the NES? Of course I do. I've got a boxed copy right behind me. So we're gonna just play a little bit of original Zelda here. It does look awesome with the cartridge just kind of poking up out of there. Incredibly bright, so that's strange. It is an awesome intro. They look like they're in great condition. It has downgraded soundtrack. Wonder if that'll play better. Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, this is a standard soundtrack. I mean, only that Castlevania 3, that's one of the only cartridges I know that has that enhanced sound chip. Though any Famicom Disk System games will have those additional sound channels. We'll have to give that a shot. Do you blow into your cartridges, or is that just dust stuff, just a myth? I definitely blow into cartridges. There's definitely some validity to that. It's incredibly bright. Like, it's difficult to look at. Ooh, that's definitely frozen on my end as well. Let's down and select. And I'm really curious. I mean, we had to do it. NES games freezing up is nothing to be alarmed about. That's just a fact of playing NES games. Everything seems incredibly bright. Like, the brightness is just blown way out. So that, to me, just seems just straight up like a setting issue. You know what? While we're at it, let's just kind of see what we have the options for. Because even here on this screen, the text is super bright. Resolution, screen size, scalar, scan lines, analog output, and advanced mode. Analog output. The DAX LED brightness, don't care about that. The length, extra advanced settings, and extra features. What's extra features? Dejittering, sprites, palette. Oh, I can choose different color palettes. Hello, nurse. Okay, now we're talking. We have different palettes we can choose from. This changes things. Okay. Okay, this changes things. Let's use a game that we definitely know. You know what? We've got Zelda in right here. Let's go back here right quick. So I know what this screen looks like by heart. Same thing, the video output doesn't even want to refresh on the OSSC. There's issues there with that for sure. And the screen's jittering around. It's almost like it's outputting... It's in 261p, which is usually what seems strange. We're going to have to look into that further. Down and select pulls this up. We've got settings here. Whoops. Headphone settings, interesting. Video. Analog output. Extra features, and we've got color palette stuff we can mess with right here. So we were on Firebrand X originally. Black and white, PC10, and Beware. FCEUX. We can try that. So this is looking a bit closer, and again, the system's frozen as far as how it looks on the OSSC. Let's toy around with this here. Okay, it's definitely not tools. It would definitely be settings, definitely video. Scalar, scanline, screen size. 1:1 square pixels, 4:3 for 16:9. Let's try 1:1. I don't think that would have anything to do with this, but I can tell from looking at this on the OSSC, it's almost as if the OSSC doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't look the same as like it should for a typical 240p game. This is really just for the output settings for HDMI. Changing resolution, game might crash. Okay, so it's at 1080p 60. Obviously, this is for the HDMI output. So I put it on 1:1, which this is really just for scaling on... that's for scaling over HDMI. And these scalars are the same thing. Again, these are for HDMI. Scanlines, obviously, the only thing that we're really using is the analog output right here. And then there's advanced modes with, here we go, resolution. It's the same thing. Width, height, cropping, scalar, scanlines, extra features, color. Limit RGB range. Sure. And we can go and fully change everything on here. I'm curious as to what limiting this RGB range does. Let's back out and see what it looks like. Super, super, super blown out. I want to go on a screen that has lots of reds, greens, and blues. Let's go over here where there's water, and then we can start tweaking this and see what it looks like. Yeah, I'm wondering if the resolution situation... So, we're on a screen where we've got lots of reds, greens, and blues. And let's start tweaking from here. Okay. So, let's go into our settings, video. And let's start looking at color here. We've limited the RGB range. That doesn't seem to do anything, so let's back out of that. Let's take a look at extra features. Enabling de-jitter, 16 sprites per scan line, palette, and then here we can go and tweak the color palette. We can do black and white if we wanted to. That right there is looking mighty fine so far. What is this, FCEUX? Okay, this is already looking way, way, way better. Okay. Beware. PC10, oh my god, that looks terrible. Black and white, no. FCEUX and Firebrand. And Beware. So Firebrand is what we originally had it at. This is that super, super blown out one. Let's try FCEUX right quick. It's very, very, very bright on the OSSC. It looks very good on my television, though. And then if I go and do... Yeah, it's like the brightness is like super, super, super hot. Unfortunately, the resolution settings are just for the scaling for when you take the original resolution in and then you pop it out over HDMI. So that's not what we would have to adjust here. But it is bizarre that the RGB output doesn't... It's almost like it's not coming out correctly. It's weird. I'm gonna have to do some research on here. Advanced mode on resolution. Yeah, there's nothing there. Advanced mode on analog output. There's no DAC that we have connected to here. Advanced settings and extra features. Advanced settings, RGB composite sync. Yes, we're using C-Sync. RGB separate sync. What does it do on here? I'll wait for the OSSC to come back. And then sync on green, which obviously we're not using. Invert RGB sync. No chroma filter. Chroma filter 1 and chroma filter 2. Black level and 700 millivolt black level. Okay, that straight off the bat looks way better on the OSSC. NTSC black level when set moves black level up. Okay. This looks way better on here. And it's interesting, it's not just the game that's outputting that's basically frozen. It's even the menus, too. Invert RGB sync. Selects the sync type when using RGB cables. Okay. Okay, this looks very, very, very good on my end. It looks pretty damn good on the OSSC as well. So I'm already loving what this is looking like. Now we have to figure out the resolution debacle. I don't see the screen flickering nearly as much. So it looks like we've... is this Beware? Ah, that's actually a solid point. We need to go back, and so we selected this 700 millivolt RGB level, and that seems to really, really change things. I'm curious to see what these chroma filters look like, but I'll leave it on chroma filter 2 before we go and mess around with that too much. Let's go back to the, whoops, that's advanced settings, extra features. So we're on FCEUX. And then we can try Beware filter on here. This looks a little green. It looks a little green on my end. It looks really nice on the OSSC, though. On the OSSC, that looks very natural. It looks a little bit too yellowy on my end. PC10 is super, super yellow. FCEUX looks great, and then Firebrand. Firebrand looks... This is what an NES output looks like, where it's a little washed out as far as color goes, but that's fine. The FCEUX is... This is where it's at. So as soon as we can figure out why the OSSC doesn't like it, we'll be golden. But as far as this color, this is looking already 10 times better. So, word to anyone wanting to do RGB output, gotta change some settings. So as soon as we can figure out what to do with the resolution here... Whoops, not tools, it's in settings. Core options. Clear save settings, okay. We're gonna go ahead and save the settings, really save, yes. Let's check out video one more time. So we were in advanced mode. Width and height. We'll have to go and fiddle with this and see if we can figure out what exactly causes it. Cropping. No, we're not going to crop. Scalars. We won't be using scalars. Obviously, this is for... that's for HDMI output. Scan lines, same thing. Analog output. Advanced settings and extra features. Okay, we've gone through here pretty much entirely. Yeah, I'll have to do some more research, because there could be a huge combination of these that just simply doesn't like, that the OSSC just simply doesn't like. But this, for what I'm looking at, looks really, really good. The compatibility is the thing that I'm the most excited for on here. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a system that is far more compatible with my library and everything that's behind me. So this is what I'm really, really looking forward to on this system. And, you know, if we can get this sorted out with the OSSC and get these settings all configured the way we want, then we'll be doing okay, I think. So I think that we'll do another stream tomorrow after I've had a chance to mess around with the settings and get everything, you know, exactly how I want it to be. I think we'll be good. So let's give it a shot and see what we can come up with. But can it play Crysis? It cannot play Crysis, unless someone ported Crysis to the NES, in which case I'd be really, really impressed. But with that, I'll leave you all until really the next time I stream. If you're catching this on YouTube, you can catch me over on Twitch. The end of Scanline, it's right down here. You can catch me streaming in the evenings, many nights of the week. And, yeah, you're welcome to give me a follow over there and check out some of this analog content when it's being played, and you can get your eyes on it for yourself and see if that's something that you want to go and fight some scalpers to get a hold of. So... Gotta play some of the Guardian Legend. Oh my goodness, absolutely, I'm down to play some Guardian Legend. Yeah, we're gonna do an export of this out to YouTube, I do think. So, yeah, I'll have the VOD over there just for archive purposes. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and for all the Twitch fam that's hanging out. Sorry for the shortened stream, but yeah, you know, this is just a little bonus thing. I wanted to unbox it. I didn't want to unbox it without all of you here with me. I know we've been waiting on this system since forever and a day. So I will catch you all tomorrow, and I'm going to go do some research to figure out how to make this thing not be hated by an OSSC. So I will catch you all tomorrow. Bye for now, everybody.